We got him! The U.S. has rescued the downed F-15 pilot who was behind enemy lines for 36 hours.
The U.S. crew member who was missing in southwestern Iran after his F-15 was shot down has been rescued. The successful extraction was announced by President Trump overnight on Truth Social, who simply said,
right.
"We got him," before providing new details that dozens of U.S. military aircraft were used to retrieve him as U.S. leadership tracked his location. It was a daring operation that included hundreds of U.S. forces racing against the clock to rescue the crew member. Fox News has learned that after the fighter jet was shot down on Friday, the weapons systems officer hiked to an elevated mountain ridge where he hid and waited for retrieval. The pilot of the jet was rescued by U.S. Special Forces on Friday, but President Trump said they waited to confirm as to not jeopardize the second operation. The president added, quote, "This is the first time in military memory that two U.S. pilots have been rescued separately deep in enemy territory."
And here's the president.
This is
on this operation.
A rescue that's very historic. It'll go down in the books. Late Thursday night, an American F-15 fighter jet went down deep inside enemy territory. Both members of the crew ejected from the aircraft and landed alive. On Iranian soil, I immediately was asked to make a decision. I ordered the U.S. Armed Forces to do whatever was necessary to bring our brave warriors back home. A risky decision, because we could have ended up with 100 dead as opposed to one or two.
Right.
It's a hard decision to make. But in the United States military, we leave no American behind.
Right.
We don't do it. Within hours, our armed forces deployed 21 military aircraft into hostile airspace, many flying at very low altitude, being shot by bullets. This first wave of search and rescue forces successfully located the pilot of the F-15, and he was extracted from enemy territory by an HH-60 Jolly Green 2 helicopter. Fabulous machine as our warriors faced gunfire at very close range. It's amazing that when you look at the machinery, what happened, that nobody was even injured.
I know, it's such a success.
Meanwhile, the second crew member, a weapons system officer, highly respected colonel, had landed a significant distance away from the pilot. When you're going at those speeds, even if you go out 2 or 3 seconds later, it's miles and miles away because you're going fast.
Wow.
He was injured quite badly and stranded in an area teeming with terrorists from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps rough group, as well as besieged militia and local authorities. Many, on top of everything else, they told the communities actually within inside of Iran, the people of Iran, they were given a tremendous incentive to find this
I can't
pilot.
believe that.
Despite the peril, the officer followed his training and climbed into the treacherous mountain terrain and started climbing toward a higher altitude, something they were trained to do in order to evade capture. They want to always go as far away from the site of the shoot down. You want to go as far away because they all head right to that site. You want to be as far away as you can.
And get out of there.
And he was injured, and he was an amazing, amazing thing. He scaled cliff faces, treated his own wounds, and contacted American forces to transmit his location. They have a very sophisticated beeper-type apparatus.
Apparently it's encrypted.
That is on them at all times. And when they go out on these missions, they make sure they have lots of battery space, and they're in good shape.
That's awesome.
And this one worked really well, amazingly, saved his life. We immediately mobilized a massive operation to retrieve him from the mountain holdout, and he kept going higher and higher. The mountain kept getting rougher and rougher, and really very, very hard to find. This second rescue mission involved 155 aircraft, including 4 bombers, 64 fighters, 48 refueling tankers, 13 rescue aircraft, and more. We were bringing them all over,
like
and
a
lot of it
military.
was subterfuge. We wanted to have them think he was in a different location because they had a vast military force out there. Thousands of people were looking. So we wanted them to look in different areas, so we were scattered all over like we were right on top of them. We had 7 different locations where they thought, and they were very confused. They said, well, wait a minute, they've got groups here, they've got groups there. It's amazing.
Had them in circles.
Thing. I was listening to these great people, these great generals. General Raisin Cain was amazing, and Pete Hegseth was amazing. But I listened to the whole thing. It was pretty amazing. So they had all these different sites where everybody thought he was located. We think we have him over there because they have 9 planes circling a little area.
Wow.
That's 25 miles down the coast.
It's deception.
So in a breathtaking show of skill and precision, lethality and force, America's military descended on the area, the real area, engaged the enemy, rescued the stranded officer, destroyed all threats, and exited Iranian territory while taking no casualties of any kind.
That's awesome.
The heroic F-15 weapons system officer had evaded capture on the ground in Iran for almost 48 hours. That's a long time.
2
when you're in
days.
tough shape. When we left, as you probably know, we had 2 large planes, pretty old planes that carried a lot. We needed a lot more equipment going in than coming out, obviously, because going in, we needed to be able to scale mountains, and we had a lot of equipment. But the sand was sandy, wet sand, so we thought there may be a problem taking off because of the weight of the plane, and then we also had all the men jumping back onto the planes, and they got pretty well bogged down, and we had a contingency plan, which was unbelievable, where lighter, faster aircraft came in, and they took them out. We blew up the old planes.
That's crazy.
We blew them up to smithereens because we had equipment on the planes that, frankly, we'd like to take, but I don't think it was worthwhile spending another 4 hours there taking it off.
Yeah, you gotta
we
get
didn't
out.
want anybody to have. We have the best equipment anywhere in the world. We didn't want anybody examining our anti-aircraft and other equipment. So these were large planes that were old and pretty old, and we blew them up. And we had faster, lighter planes come in, and they were able to land on the sand. We needed the bigger planes because we had so much equipment that we needed. We took 3 helicopters over there.
Oh, wow.
Which were very strongly used and couldn't have lived without them. They did, and they performed unbelievably well. And if you'd see it, you wouldn't believe it. They came off the plane, and these guys had them. The rotors were off. They rebuilt these helicopters in less than 10 minutes.
Wow, that's crazy.
And that was one of the more amazing things. These are helicopters, small, unbelievably powerful, but small, very small, so it can get into certain areas. And they got them off the plane, and they rebuilt all 3 of them in a matter of less than 10 minutes.
It sounds like a million things went wrong, but they still pulled it off.
The genius of these people.
Wow.
Who would think that? You'd think it would take 5 days to build them. And in some companies, it would take 5 days, and they wouldn't do it well.
Yeah.
But they served us well. As Commander-in-Chief, I never forget the extraordinary risk taken by the warriors that we send into battle, and the genius. I mean, think of it, having a contingency of 3 planes waiting because we think the sand is so bad that we probably won't be able to take off.
And they say Trump's got no plan. They say he's got us into this war. He doesn't know what he's doing. It's just to stoke his own ego because he's a maniac. I mean, get out of here. He's got 10 plans more than anybody wants to give him credit for.
But to have a contingency as opposed to having to wait 2 days, can you imagine right in the middle? This was central. This was right, you would call it central casting if you were doing a movie for location. And probably the toughest area of Iran where we'd be sitting there. So these planes came in, those pilots came in so fast and so quick and got out of there. Everybody got aboard and just got 15-minute intervals. 1 load out, 1 load out, 1 load out. It happened. And we were watching and we said, that's amazing.
Yeah, wow.
In many ways, I was almost more impressed by the contingency that we had than the fact that, if we would have had a runway or decent soil, but it was an amazing.
That's what's so amazing about this. Had everything gone perfectly, it would be a miracle. But the fact fact that things went wrong, that we didn't even hear about during this operation, the fact that rotors came off helicopters, that planes got stuck in the ground, the fact that there were enemy forces and that our special forces were under fire, all of this happened and it still worked.
Yeah, this U.S. military rescue operation will go down in the history books as a successful operation that displayed not only the firepower but the intelligence of the U.S. military.
Yep.
Remember, hundreds of U.S. forces landed south of the Iranian city of Isfahan undetected, and they were able to make their way to this U.S. crew member who was missing for nearly 48 hours, hiding in a mountain range, and ultimately rescue their colleague and get him out of enemy territory. The Iranians can say that they have air superiority. The reality is quite different.
Yeah.
U.S. forces not only were able to send in those special operators on the ground, but they were also watching from above. This was being monitored by President Trump and top U.S. generals for 2 days straight. And whenever Iranians approached this area where the crew member was hiding, they were struck. And this, again, speaks to the intelligence and how the United States was watching. The president made clear on True Social.
That's why the regime didn't send their own forces out to locate these pilots right away. What happened? They sent civilians out there. They said, hey, we've got a bounty for this pilot. Go find him. So they told their own people to go out there and look for these pilots. And that's what you see on the screen here. You see these squads marauding with flags.
Last night, this U.S. crew member was never alone because the United States had this advanced technology, the beaker inside the suit of this individual, so that they could transmit their location to U.S. forces. The CIA was involved. These ground forces and special operators, along with dozens of U.S. military aircraft, landed there in Iran. This is deep inside enemy territory, and were able to take the fight to the Iranians and ensure that the suppression fire was accurate, so these Iranians were not able to approach. Remember, the Iranians had put out a request for civilians in Iran and a reward of thousands of dollars.
Not their own
if they
troops.
could capture this U.S. crew member.
They were afraid.
And they were unable to do so because of the deception campaign that was waged by the CIA to make the Iranians think that this individual was already in U.S. hands. While that was taking place, a massive operation was underway at the highest levels of the U.S. military and government to send in these special forces undetected south of this major Iranian city where there are thousands of Iranian military structures. And they were able to ultimately rescue this U.S. crew member and safely get not only the crew member, but all of these special operators out of Iranian territory.
That just shows you the overwhelming advantage that the United States has right now. Remember, we've been told for several weeks now that Iran's Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their surface-to-air missile capability is gone. We found out from President Trump himself that the Iranians got lucky launching a shoulder-fired missile, something that a person could carry at a low-flying aircraft. So they don't have some sophisticated defense system set up here. They've got a few remnants that are hiding, trying to do whatever they can to stay in power, but it's not working.
So he was hiding somewhere in these mountains, which obviously he needed to do in order to not be captured by the people on the ground who were being told by the government, go get him, capture him. First they said kill him, then they said don't kill him, capture him, we want him alive. And they were offering $60,000 in bounty. But him hiding in these crevices in the mountains, one, had to have made it more difficult for the Americans to rescue him. And I want you to speak to that, Trey. But also, does this operation, I mean, Griff said, you know, this operation confirmed that we did have air superiority, but does it also confirm that we had agents on the ground, spies who were helping our operators?
Probably yes, but here's the thing you got to remember. Air superiority, air supremacy, these are terms that describe how one force controls the battlefield in a given conflict. It doesn't mean that a battlefield is somehow a threat-free environment. It doesn't mean that a battlefield is a safe place all of a sudden. And that's the lie that the mainstream news in America tried pushing out. And it's just incredible, some of the stuff that they've said.
Well, certainly the Iranian military's capacity to shoot down an F-15, a stealth fighter jet, certainly shows two things, Lindsay. First, it shows that their air defense systems, which is a multi-layered integrated air defense system, which has historically included, by the way, Russian air defense assets, that air defense system has not been decimated.
Yeah, there's a lot wrong about that. The F-15, not a stealth fighter. The type of weapon used, not some sophisticated defense system Trump doesn't know about. Nope, shoulder-launched missile. But listen to what the spies are up to.
Speaks to the excellence of the U.S. military and their preparation for an event like this to take place. Thousands of U.S. and Israeli sorties have flown over the skies of Iran since Operation Epic Fury began. And this is the only incident of a U.S. fighter jet being shot down. And again, on Friday, the pilot was rescued by U.S. Special Forces, and overnight, this U.S. crew member was rescued. It speaks to the ability of the Americans to prepare for something that can happen during war, a plane being targeted. While much of Iran's air defense systems have been taken out as a result of the successful U.S. strikes, when they are able to shoot at U.S. planes, these special forces are waiting for the call to go in and rescue a colleague, like they did overnight with this U.S. crew member. But when you think about the details of this operation, it was an operation that used the highest levels of U.S. intelligence to launch this deception campaign, but also to locate where this crew member was and ensure that U.S. forces could get to him before the Iranians did. And when you think about what was taking place, the president was working through the day and night with top generals and military officials, understanding this was a race against the clock. This was not a simple mission. This was incredibly complex.
Do you think President Kamala Harris would have been able to pull that off? I don't think so.
Missing pilot over the course of more than 24 hours as the military sought to bring him to safety.
This is the wreckage.
It began on Friday, of course, when the F-15 was shot down. The U.S. got their first communication from the missing weapons service officer later that evening, indicating that he was injured. And then over the next more than 24-hour period, on multiple fronts, the U.S. military sprung into action, organizing a search and rescue operation involving both aircraft but also boots on the ground, as well as generating a misinformation campaign inside Iran to, in effect, throw Iranian authorities or attempt to throw them off the scent, saying that both U.S. pilots had by that point already been rescued. Wasn't true. The Iranian government was doing its best to try to find the pilot first, going so far as to encourage residents in the area to look for the pilot, report his location, even offering a reward. And then that pilot, in the midst of this, found his way 7,000 feet up a ridge line, hid there as his location was pinpointed, and then those forces went in. Again,
hiding in an elevated location did two things. First, it got this pilot not only away from the crash site, but second, also to an elevated position where he could watch what was going on. Of course, the regime hit squads, they're going to approach the crash site first, see if there's anybody still there, check out the airplane, see what they can do, fan out from there and go look for everybody. The third thing it also did was, since he's higher up, it means there's not going to be any interference, getting his signal to the rescuers to let them know where he was hiding. This guy was a fugitive in one of the most dangerous countries ever, and he knew exactly what to do.
Low-flying aircraft, including helicopters and fixed wing, so dangerous that in the end, the U.S. lost 2 aircraft. They weren't able to take off. They were later destroyed so that they wouldn't fall into Iranian hands.
Blew them up.
But that pilot taken to safety, time to treat those injuries, serious injuries, that though we are told he will recover. Just a remarkable more than 24 hours with a tremendous outcome for the military, for the pilot, and certainly for his family and loved ones.
And while many people were saying, this proves Trump's been lying, this proves Trump doesn't know what he's talking about, playing games with American lives, look at what it actually means.
Yeah, I was talking to some sources last night when this was all coming together overnight in Iran, and you think about that the past 36 or 48 hours, depending on how you look at it, is going to be made into probably a couple of movies. Just in terms of the extraordinary nature and heroism of what went on.
Probably not. Hollywood doesn't like any of this.
This was America at its best, right? The covenant between air crews who fly deep behind enemy lines to carry out missions, and the hundreds of men and women who then risk their lives to go find and bring home this one person. And it wasn't guaranteed that any of those or all of those hundreds who then went in on the ground, the Delta Force.
That's right, no guarantees.
The Army 160th pilots, the gunship pilots, the A-10 pilots, all who converged there. There was no guarantee they were going to come home either.
I know.
But they were all willing to risk everything to go in and save this one man.
Yeah.
Absolutely extraordinary what's happened over the past 48 hours. It's something only the United States can do.
That's our country. That's a country we should be proud of. That's a country we shouldn't be ashamed of. That's a country that wouldn't exist if we didn't have the president and the leadership team that we have behind all of this. And I don't know how anybody could argue with that. I don't know how anybody could say that this country would be this strong and able to accomplish that stuff if other people were running it right now, while enabling the very regimes that are waging war against us.
At one point, it appears as though this colonel climbed injured some 7,000 feet up onto a ridge line to allow the rest of the Air Force to fly in and bomb and keep the IRGC and the Baji militia below that ridge line. So it gave them a free fire zone. And then he waited for this massive rescue package, is what they call it. So gunships, refueling aircraft, and then the helicopters with the Delta and pararescue guys on them to come in. There are reports that there were 2 planes that the U.S. had to burn at a remote airfield in Iran that they may or may not have left. That's unconfirmed. I think the other part of this.
Those planes that got blown up allegedly landed at an airfield in Iran. Now think of that. How can there be a vacant airfield in Iran if Iran, whatever, if they're in control of their country, if they're in power, if they've got aircraft and military personnel at that airfield? It was abandoned. It was just sitting there, and the U.S. used it as part of this rescue operation. They're not in control of their country.